at Kuf Lamed Hey. That's 135a. 5 lines from the bottom, just as 2 dots over there. Amar Rabbi. Rabbi says, Kol she'imitmei leida nima l'shmeina. If the mother has a regular birth and she becomes tamei, because any woman that gives birth becomes impure for a boy for 7 days. So then on the 8th day, that's when you perform the bris. Kol she'ini mitmei leida. If the mother does not have a regular birth, she's not impure for the 7 days after a boy, then the child doesn't have the bris on the 8th day. What is this referring to? So Rashi gives us 2 examples. His first example is a cesarean birth. So it wasn't a regular birth, it wasn't a natural birth. The Gemara calls it yetze daifen. The baby goes out the side. The second example that Rashi gives us is that it was a non-Jewish woman that converted the day after, I guess her and the child converted, the day after the birth. So because it's the day after the birth was when she wasn't Jewish. So she doesn't become impure. The laws of impurity would only apply to a Jew, not to a convert. So what do you do then? Then you do the circumcision on that day, whenever the conversion is. Or if it was a cesarean, you do the circumcision on the first day. Of course, when the baby is old enough and healthy enough to do it, but there's no mitzvah of the 8th day. Shneimar, it says in the pasuk, Ishas ki sazriya, woman will conceive, v'yalda zachar, and she'll give birth to a male, v'tama, she'll be impure, v'gaimer, etc. V'yem hashmini yimal b'sar lasei. And then on the 8th day, after you follow all of those, then on the 8th day she'll have the boy will have a circumcision. Amalei Abaya. Abaya says, I have a big question on what Rabbi is saying. He's talking to Rabbi, I guess. Now, it makes more sense if you have this other girsa. I have on the bottom, I have another text that says, Amar Rabba, Amar Rabasi, Kol Shetima. Rabba said in the name of Rabasi. Then Abaya is talking to Rabba. Rabasi, I think, went to Eretz Yisrael, I think, before Abaya's time. Abaya says, what about those first generations of Jews in the days of Adam, and not Adam, days of Avram Avinu? So those early Jews, they kept the laws of circumcision. They were told so by God, but they didn't have the laws of impurity yet. Maybe even if they kept it, but it wasn't really the laws of impurity. And they did a circumcision at 8 days. That was the command by God to Avram, that they should do the circumcision on 8 days. So Rabbi or maybe Rabbi responds to Abai, what are you asking from that? The Torah was given and the laws changed. It's like sort of asking on America before the Constitution. But what did they do before the Constitution? Well, what's the issue? Now the laws switched. Okay, lahavdol. The Gemara says, Eily, is it really so that we can say this, that a yetze daifen, cesarean birth, doesn't have a bris on the 8th day? V'yitma, we have a statement. Yetze daifen, a cesarean birth. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what this means. Rashi has 2 possibilities. Either this boy has 2 foreskins, or he actually has 2 organs. And what do you do over there? So Rav Huna and Rav Chia Barav. It's Machlekas Rav Huna and Rav Chia Barav. These are both students of Rav. Rav Chia Barav is a son of Rav, and Rav Huna is a student of Rav, and they discuss these 2 cases. One say that you do a bris on Shabbos. The other one says that you don't do a bris on Shabbos. Okay, what do you see from that? It says, Ad kan pligi el chalavas Shabbos. What are they arguing about? If you do the bris on Shabbos. But no one discusses if the bris is on the 8th day. Now, we had two cases there. One of them was a cesarean birth, and one of them was this interesting fellow that had two organs. And there was a discussion about if you can do the bris on Shabbos. But on the 8th day, everyone agrees, if it's during the week, everyone would agree that you do the bris. Now, Rabbi Asi said that a cesarean birth, you don't do the bris on the 8th day. Here we're seeing that both opinions agree that you do the bris on the 8th day. It's a kasha on Rabbi Asi. The Gemara says, Haba Talia. Actually, it's dependent one on the other. If the bris is on the 8th day, then that opinion holds Mechal on Alavas Shabbos. It doesn't tell us who, it just says one opinion is. That opinion holds that you Mechal Shabbos. If the bris is not on the 8th day, then you're not Mechal Shabbos. And if you think about it, where do I even know that you Mechal Shabbos for a bris? Because it says Bayayim Hashmini. That's where we learned it from. Or there was a tradition, right? There are different ways of doing it. But whatever the case is, Bayayim Hashmini, you're Mechal, that's what tells us that the bris is on Shabbos. That means only if the bris is on the 8th day, will be Mechal Shabbos. So this is dependent one on the other. So what did we gain here? Is that Rav Asi has a support from Rav Huna, Rav Chia Barav, one of them, that holds that the bris is on the 8th day, that holds that the bris is not on the 8th day, and you're not Mechal Shabbos. The main point is that the bris is not on the 8th day. Rav Asi has a support for that from one of these opinions. Okay. Now the Gemara says Kitanoi. It actually goes back further. It goes back to the Mishnah times. We're going to have a name in here that's not common for a Mishnah. We'll see. Okay. Yesh yilid bayis sheni malecha b'yesh yilid bayis sheni malashmeina. When it says that you have to circumcise the children, it also says that you have to circumcise the servants, the slaves. That now it could be a slave that you owned. It could be a slave that you purchased. A slave that you owned, normally the bris would be done on the 8th day. A slave that you purchased, the bris would be done as soon as you purchased him. Let's say you purchased a baby. So the assumption is a baby, you would do the bris right when you purchased him. You didn't have to wait 8 days. Okay, let's see what happens here. It says, Yesh yilid bayis sheni malechad. Yilid bayis, it's not just a home birth. It means that the birth was already when it was in your possession, when this slave was yours. Yesh yilid bayis sheni malashmeina. Sometimes the bris could be, even though you own the mother and the child was born in your possession, the bris is on the 1st day. Sometimes it's on the 8th day. And it's also possible the other way. It's also possible that you just purchased a servant and you do the bris on the 1st day. And sometimes you purchased a servant and the bris is on the 8th day. We have to work this out. Rashi quotes this from the Shiltes. And the Shiltes is one of the Gainim. But based on the Shiltes, Rashi is like adjusting some girsais here in this text. So Yesh Miknas Kesef, we go back over this. Moshe, you're going to see they start translating the second one before the first one. I don't know if you'll see this. So we start off Yilid Bayis, now Miknas Kesef. Now we go to explain Miknas Kesef. Yesh Miknas Kesef Sheni Malechad, Yesh Miknas Kesef Sheni Malashmeina. You see that it's translating the one that we just the one that we just said. When is it that the purchased servant could be the bris on the 1st day, could be on the 8th day? Ketzad, how is that? So Lakach Shifcham Uberes. If you bought a maidservant that was pregnant, and then she gave birth. So this is a servant that was purchased. I know you purchased the mother, but you purchased the child that was inside as well. Okay, it's not really really like purchased separately, but nevertheless it's purchased, and it's the bris is on the 8th day. Okay. Lakach, this is like a riddle. Lakach shivcha vlada ima, but let's say you buy them separately. You buy them separately, you buy the shivcha, and you buy the vlad. Zui miknas kesef shni malachad. In other words, I guess they were born, the child was born already. So then you do the bris on the first day. She just gave birth. And on the day she gave birth, you purchase both. Okay. They already start working from after the birth. They say in the rice fields, they would crouch down, give birth, and keep working. Put the baby on the back or something. Okay, then it's possible that the child was born already owned by the Jew, and the bris is on the 8th day. That's an easy one. Ketzad. Lakach shivcha v'nesabra etzel v'yalda zayilid bayis nimel shmeina. That was so obvious. That you own the mother, and she becomes pregnant under the ownership of a Jew. So she gives birth. So the child has that status of it's a quasi-Jew, because he has to keep the mitzvahs, most of the mitzvahs, keeps the mitzvahs the same that a woman would keep. And the bris is on the 8th day. Rab Chama says, this is the interesting name to be from the Tanoim. Usually Rab Chama is like Rab Chama Bar Chanina was a student of Rabbi. Maybe the brises include the first generation, like Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Maybe that could be an answer. Okay, Rab Chama says, Yalda v'acha kachet bila zo yilid bayis shenima le'achad. You bought the mother, but you didn't put her in the mikveh yet. You know, part of the purchase was normally that they do this quasi-conversion. It's a conversion that converts them into a Jewish slave. It's not into a full Jew. They become a Jewish slave. So, where the master puts them in the mikveh, and they become, the master accepts on them the mitzvahs, I guess, of that they're going to be responsible for. So, let's say the woman gave birth before the mikveh. So this opinion holds that when the mother gave birth, she doesn't have the laws of impurity. Going back to Rabbi that says if the mother isn't impure, the child doesn't have a bris on the 8th day. So just because it was owned by a Jew, but if there's no laws of impurity because she wasn't in the mikveh yet, so then sheni malachad. The bris is on the first day. What we were looking for here was this opinion. We're looking for Rab Chama's opinion that would be a support for Rabbi. Now we have another opinion, the Tanakamas, we'll see. Let's say the mother went to the mikveh before the birth. The pregnant woman goes to the mikveh. So then the birth was after the mother has the laws of impurity. So then the bris is going to be on the 8th day, like Rabbi holds. The Tanakama, and the Tanakama's opinion, they don't make that difference. There's no difference. If the mother is owned by the Jew, then the bris is going to be on the 8th day. Even though the mother isn't impure, the bris is going to be on the 8th day. Okay. Now, if you go back and you look at this, the Gemara is going to spell it out, but we wanted two cases. We wanted a bris on the first day, we wanted a bris on the 8th day, for whether it was purchased or whether it was born under the possession of the Jew. We didn't get two cases for the Tanakama. We got two cases for Rab Chama in each of them. The Gemara explained this. Yeah.
When we say first day, we mean the first available day after the 8th day, right?
No.
We will do a bris before 8 days?
Yeah. I was expecting a question like that. Because the vitamins that you need for the blood to clot and all of that only come in the 8th day, apparently that's not the main decisive characteristic that we're looking for. This, you do the bris on the day that the slave was purchased. So even if it's the slave was purchased on the first day, you would do a bris on the first day. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Now, if there would be a health concern, of course we would wait. It's not. We're just saying that that's when the time is. That's when you do it. Yeah, in the conversion process, so you do a bris on someone before they convert. Now, let's say there's a baby that's in the conversion process. Let's say the mother's in the conversion process, and she has a baby. It's really no mitzvah of the 8th day. I mean, it's just a regular convert. It could be on any day. They want to do it on the 8th day because it looks like, oh, this is the way, But really, it may be best not to do it on the 8th day because it's actually not the bris of a child that's born Jewish. It's the bris of a convert. Sometimes some rabbis say you do it on the 9th day, but it's like in the middle over there. It's like, okay. Let's skip Amarava. It says Bishleim le Rab Chama. According to Rab Chama, Mishkachas la Yilid Bayas Ni Malechad, Yilid Bayas Ni Maleches. We have both. You have a child that's born as a Jew, not as a Jew. Let me say that different. A child that's born under Jewish possession, and he has a bris on the first day, and he has a bris on the 8th day. Not the same child, of course. Two possible cases, and we explained, and the Gemara is going to explain it again. But we explained that it was the mother didn't go to the mikveh yet. So then the bris is on the first day. The mother went to the mikveh already before the child was born, and then she's tamei later than the bris on the 8th day. Miknas kesef ni malechad, miknas kesef ni maleches. How does that work if you purchase them? It says Yolda v'achakachet bila. So the Yilid Bayas ni malechad, Yilid Bayas ni maleches was if she became pregnant by you. Yilid, okay, so let's see this. Yalda ve'achakachet bila, if she gave birth and then she went to the mikveh. Zeu Yilid Bayas ni malechad. Okay, as we explained before. Because the mother wasn't tamei later. Hitbila v'achakach yalda. If she went to the mikveh, then she gives birth. Zeh yilid bayis ni meleches. This is the yilid bayis. This is a regular birth. So the mother was tamei because she went to the mikveh already, and the bris is on the 8th day. See, the confusing thing is here it listed in the opposite order. Here it listed the first one first and the second one second. Miknas kesef ni melishmeina. What's that case? If you purchased it and the bris is on the 8th day, you bought the mother pregnant when she was pregnant. So you bought the mother as a maidservant and the child and the fetus. And then so the bris is going to be on the 8th day. Even though you purchased the child. Miknas kesef ni malechad, how is that going to work? It was a very interesting case. I don't know why he has to give such an interesting case. The case is, this mother was purchased by two different people. Well, the mother was purchased by one and the child was purchased by someone else. And this is so not the regular case of a birth. It's not considered, it doesn't go under the category of the pasuk that says, Yimal lachem kol zachar l'darasechem. It's not considered lachem because you don't own the mother. So therefore, The bris is going to be done on the first day. Rashi goes through over here why you needed such a strange case. You could have used the case that the Tanakama used. What was the case of Miknas Kesef Nimala Echad? If you bought the mother, and you bought the mother and the child that was just born. The mother gave birth, and you bought them both. The bris is on the first day. Why do we have to give a case where you bought the mother? One person bought the mother, one person bought the child. Why do you have to switch the case? The Tanakama already had a case when the bris is on the first day, on a purchased slave. Okay. It's a question. I mean, Rashi goes through it to explain why there's a chiddush here that it needs to say it. But I'm pointing out that there's a difference in this case. In the case of the purchased slave, that the bris is on the first day. The Tanakama has one story, and Reb Chama has a different story, and it's not necessarily that there has to be like that. The problem is, Tanakama, according to the Tanakama, Bishlam Kula Mishkachos, though I have three of those cases, but I don't have the fourth case. How do you have a case where the child was born in the possession of the Jew, and the bris is going to be on the first day? Because the Tanakama doesn't care when the tefillah was. Why don't they care? Because they don't care if the mother is Tamei Leda. That's only the opinion of Rabbi. Rabbi says if the mother is Jewish enough to be Tamei Leda, to be impure after the birth, impure for 7 days after the birth of a boy, then the child has a bris on the 8th day. That's Rabbi's opinion. So if the mother didn't go to the mikveh yet, if she was purchased, she didn't go to the mikveh yet. According to Rabbi, according to Reb Chama, the bris is going to be on the first day because the mother wasn't tamei. According to the Tanakama, the bris is going to be on the 8th day. So we're asking, the Brisa started out telling me that there's a case that there's a bris on the first day. What's the case where the bris is on the first day? If it was born under the possession of the Jew, it's a yelid bias, then there's never a case where the bris is going to be on day one. It's always going to be on the 8th day. Yeah.
I think the chiddush might be that here you have a case of what would be a maternal lineage at the moment where his mother is Jewish, but so normally if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish, you should have a bris on the 8th day. But he doesn't have the bris on the 8th day because of this situation of
where he's purchased by someone else. Yeah. Right. Right. And I agree. That's good. That is a chiddush. I'm just pointing out that why do you need such a big chiddush when the case was much simpler when you just purchased them both? I hear. Maybe it wanted to say the chiddush. It wanted to say the chiddush is what you say. Wanted to show even though they were purchased before the birth, nevertheless the bris is still going to be on the first day, right? And so maybe that chiddush should be also for the Tanakama. That's a good question. If you wanted to say a chiddush, say it over there. Yeah. Okay. What the point of the Gemara here is that where do we get the case of that it should be on the first day? The Gemara could answer that it's that they hold Yetzidaifen. That would be an answer. A Caesarean. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah b'lekech shifcha le'ubra. You didn't buy the mother. You only bought the child. So you bought like the what this mother produces. That's not considered. That doesn't go under the category of lachem, yima lachem kol zachar, because you didn't buy the mother. This would apply. I could explain this according. We're looking for a case in the Tanakama, but I can explain this according to Reb Chama, where if I didn't buy the mother, then the mother's not Tamei Leda. So I'll explain it back to that it all supports Reb Chama, that it all supports Reb Asi. That why over here is the bris on the first day? Because the mother's not tummy, you didn't buy the mother. So Rashi points out that that's not what we're talking about. It could be that the mother belongs to a different Jew. The mother is Tmei Leda, but you only purchased the child. The child's bris is going to be on the first day, even though the mother's Jewish, partially Jewish, and Tmei Leda. That's a chiddush. The Gemara says, 1 second, that's only going to work. This is the whole discussion in Bava Basra. Is it considered that you own the property because you have the rights to the produce? You have all the rights to the produce, doesn't mean you own the let's say the trees or something. You buy the fruits of the tree. Someone told me his mother would go around in Israel, they would see like a mango tree or something, or some, I don't know, apricots. They would say, they go to knock on the door and they would buy all the fruits to the tree. It don't take a Gemara head to do that. I want the Kenyan Paris. I want to buy all the fruits this year. I'm going to come by every day and pick. So according to one opinion, that means that you actually, that's as if you own the tree. If that's the case, then it's as if you purchased the mother in this case. You purchased the mother. So then what's the difference? The bris should be on the 8th day. You bought the shifcha and you have no intention of doing the tefillah. So granted, there's no tumas leda, but tumas leda doesn't make the issue here. The issue here is it's not considered really yours. It's not lachem. When you said yima lachem kol zachar, doesn't apply to this. Okay, that's how we concluded. It's sort of a little anti-climactic. I was expecting it to get back to the Yotze Daifen. That would have been. It says, so how do we have it? Well, you have it by your Yotze Daifen. But that wouldn't have told me anything about Yelid bias. We're looking for details in Yelid bias, Miknas Kesef. That would apply across the board. Okay, Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Eimer. Sort of a new sugi here. Shimon ben Gamliel says, probably the father of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Kol sheshal lamed yaim ba'adam eine nefel shnemar peduyim ben chodesh tifta. A nefel is a miscarriage or a stillborn. If the child waits 30 days, survives 30 days, and it's not considered a miscarriage. Before that, it could be that the child was really not a viable child. If the child dies before that. The same thing applies to an animal, but not for 30 days. It's 8 days. Only from the 8th day and on are you allowed to bring it as a sacrifice. So that tells me that after 8 days, it's considered a viable animal, and it's not considered a miscarriage. Gemara says, that means if you don't wait, then the animal is in doubt, or the child is in doubt. 30 days, right? It takes 30 days to make sure that this child is viable. It's possible that the simcha b'pidyon haben is because now you see that the child survived. That's part of the simcha. The shechianu, maybe there's a discussion about that. Now, okay, so the child survives the first 30 days. What happens within the 30 days? So it's suffix. Mimal hechimal linanai. How are you allowed to do a bris? We're on top of 136. Hey, how are you allowed to do a bris on Shabbos? We don't know if this child is really a viable child. You can't just do a bris. It's a violation of Shabbos. If there was no obligation to do a bris, how are you allowed to do the bris? Amar Avad, I know they do a bris even on a if the child dies before the 8th day, but that's just like a custom of the Chevra Kadisha, I think. And we're talking about the mitzvah of Mila, that to override Shabbos, that would require it to be an obligation. Amar Ravada Barava says,
Rabbi,
yeah.
That comment, the Chiyuv on the Chevra Kadisha, they're doing a post-mortem bris?
I believe they do that, yeah.
Wow, never heard of that.
Yeah. I didn't know that either, but I read read a novel as a kid. It was called Sadia Weissman. It was about they took the Yemenite children and they sold them. The Yemenite children were coming in anyway. It was at the end of the story. I'll kill the book for you. I don't think you'll find it anyway. They ended up almost marrying his sister. Very interesting. But he was kidnapped, and they told the father that the baby died. So he said, "Well, show him to me." They said, "No, we did the burial already." He said, "But what about the bris that you're supposed to do? If a child dies, you're supposed to do a bris on the child." Anyway, that's where I got that. So anyway, Ben-Sion Führer was the author. I think I heard that. Okay. Yeah, that's about 40 years ago. Or less. So Ravada Barava says, you're allowed to do the bris on Shabbos regardless. Why? Im chayhu, if the child is viable, and as we're on day 8 now, and the child needs to live 30 days to know if he's viable. So on day 8, if he's going to survive, so shaper kamal, then that was a good bris. We'll find out later. But im lav, and if the child doesn't survive, mechatech bebasaru. So what kind of prohibition was that? It's not a live child. It's not like a chabura. It's just cutting meat. So there's no problem. Mimanafshach. Either way, if you consider this child alive, then the bris is good. And if you don't consider the child alive because it's really a miscarriage, then what prohibition did you do? Yeah. They said until the child graduates from medical school, they still consider it a fetus, right? So, Tanya. So what about the following brisa? Safek ben Zayin, Safek ben Ches. We learned this yesterday or 2 days ago, that if there's a child that you don't know if it's a 7-month or a 8-month. Now, 8-month in those days was considered not viable. So what do? Ein mechal navas Shabbos. You don't do a bris on Shabbos because it's a doubt. You're not going to do a bris on Shabbos. Why don't you do the bris? Nimalei mimanav shachar vada barava svara. Get a good svara. It says, what's the problem? Im chayhu, if it's a 7th month term, 7th month pregnancy, so then the child is viable. So shapa kamala was a good bris. And if not, so you did nothing wrong. Why don't you do the bris anyway? You lose the whole svara over there from that brisa, according to Ravada Barava. Amar Mar Breder Ravina, Anav Rav Nechumi Bar Zachariah Tagamina, Mimal Hachinami Malinamai. We translate this, Mar Breder Ravina. In Rav Nechumi Bar Zachariah, they translate that brisa, not that you don't do a bris. Of course you do a bris. Ravada Barava is right. You do a bris on the 8th day on Shabbos. Mimanavshach. So what does it say you don't do a bris? It says, what about preparing the knife? Or carrying the knife through the streets to bring it? Rabbi Lezer held that you're allowed. For a suffix nefel, it's not allowed. But for the actual bris, mimanavshach, there's no problem. If it's a kosher bris, then good. If not, then it's mechatech bebasar. Amar Abaye says ketanai. This subject that we're talking about is a nefel considered alive, or is the nefel considered dead? In other words, this child that's not viable, what status does it have? In other words, like this, we said, if you accept Ravada Barabba's svara, you have to say like this, that if the child's alive, then it's 100% alive, and we're allowed to do a bris. If the child is not going to survive, then I don't view it as alive now. I view it as dead already. That's what you have to accept Ravada Barabba's svara. Abai is coming to say that that's actually a machlekes. I could say that the child is not going to survive, but right now it's alive. And then you lose Ravada Barabba's svara. Because what do you mean you're mechatach b'basar? You're making a wound on something that's alive. What do you say? It's going to die? Well, so what? Right now it's not. It's still alive. It's still an avera. You can't do the bris on Shabbos. So that's a machlekes tanaim. That's what Abai is going to bring out. It says v'chiyamas min behema ashiri lachem la'achla. If an animal will die, talking about Tumas Nevela, Lavi ben Shmeina Shein Shchitasim Etarasa. It's talking about an animal on the 8th day that the Shchita doesn't purify it. Sorry. Ben Shmeina, not on the 8th day. Ben Shmeina over here would mean, remember we had that Gemara B'chairos about the gestation period of the animals. I guess, remember there was an animal that was 9 months also. There were 5 months, but then there was a 9 month. We're talking about that this animal was an 8th month and it's not going to survive. It's an 8th month, just like we say by humans that the 8th month gestation isn't viable. So here also, he's saying, the Tanna Kama here says that just because you shechted it, it's still considered a nevela. Still considered impure. Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, Shchitasim etarasei. Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. These are two, a generation off from the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's students would be Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eily, and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Their sons, that's Rabbi Yosi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. They say that no, if you do a shchita on this animal, it's pure. My lav b'kamiflagi. It must be that the machlekes is between the Tanna Kama and these two opinions is what Abai is claiming, is that it's a machlekes if the animal is considered alive before it dies, even though it's not viable. So the marsa v'chayu, if it's alive and you did a shchita, so then you took away the nevela aspect. Marsa v'mesu. Other one says you're mechatach b'basar. What did you do when you did a shchita? You didn't do anything. It was dead. So that's the machlekes. Yeah.
I just discovered something. I'm a little late, like with pictures, but just to mention that, and I know we're not a halacha shir, but it says the first legal authority to rule about the post-mortem infant circumcision was Rav Nachshon ben Tzadok, who was the head of Surah. I mean, we're going way back. And then it says that Rav David ben Yosef Abu Dirhem, who was in Spain in 1340, added a custom that we gave a name to the deceased child. So that's an additional thing, actually giving the Jewish name post-mortem, which they never, so just a side of it. I'm sorry, I got
Very interesting.
All right.
Interesting. So it goes to show that these Jewish writers, they're throwing in things. It's important to read these Jewish books. They throw in these minhagim and halachas.
Fiction based on fact, you know.
That's right. Okay. Amar Rava. Rava responds to Abaya. Abaya claims that there's a machlekes here if the child is considered alive, even though he can't survive. Amar Rava Yihachi. I have a question on you, Abaya, Rava says. If that's actually the machlekes, is the child here? It's an animal. Is this animal considered alive before it dies and it's not viable? Instead of arguing linyan tumavitara regarding impurity, liflagi linyan achila. Why don't they argue about if you're allowed to eat it? According to the opinion that says that it's alive, you did a shchita, it's edible, it's kosher. According to the other opinion, it's not kosher, it was dead before you shechted it. It looked like it was alive, but that's not considered alive. Ella de Kuli Alma, so Rabbi says, no, it must be mesu. It's not considered alive. For Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Bar Shimon, Savri, Ketreifa, they view it as like a treifa. It goes like this. Treifa, if there's an animal that's a treifa, that means it has a blemish that would cause it to die. Even though it's not going to survive. But nevertheless, if you do a shchita on a treifa, it doesn't become a nevela. The difference between nevela and treifa is that nevela gives off impurity. A treifa had a kosher shchita, and you check the lungs, it wasn't kosher. So, okay, you give it to the dogs or whatever. But the nevela, it gives off an impurity also. If it touches vessels or food, if it touches food, it gives off impurity. So, over here, it's the same story. In other words, no one says that it's possibly kosher. Everyone agrees that it's not kosher. The only question is it considered that you shechted it and it takes off the impurity? V'rabbanan leidami letreifa. Treifa is l'shasa kosher. Haile is l'shasa kosher. A treifa had a time when it was viable. It got sick. Whatever lung things, respiratory things it got, whatever other the 18 treifas it got, now it's not viable. Okay, so a treifa, when you shecht it, that becomes pure, but this never had a moment when it could survive because it was an 8-month pregnancy. That was like synonymous with a stillborn or a miscarriage, 8-month pregnancy. The Gemara says, 1 second, I'll give you an example of a treifa that never had a chance also. What about that case? It was born a treifa. The Gemara says, Hasam yesh b'mina shchita. That has in its, even though this individual animal never had a chance, but this type of animal had a chance. This type of animal means these animals that have this illness, so they start off not like that, and then whatever they get later. But it's a regular animal. This type of animal is really kosher, and when you shecht it, it takes off the impurity. But over here, there is no such thing as an 8-month animal that actually survives. So therefore, even shechting it is not going to take off the impurity. And that's the machlekes. It's talking about, does the shechita help to take off the impurity? But it's not a discussion about, is it considered alive? Rav is contesting Abaya's, what Abaya claims is the machlekes. Ibayelu. The Gemara has a question. Mi pliga Rabban Elad Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Eily. Did the Rabbanan argue on Reb Shimon ben Gamliel? Now, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel said that you have to wait 30 days to know if a child is viable, and you have to wait 8 days to know if an animal is viable. So, do they agree to him or not? According to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, you're not allowed to eat an animal within the first 8 days. I know you can't bring it as a korban, that the pasuk says. What about, are you allowed to shecht an animal within the first 8 days? A calf. Can you shecht it on the first day? According to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, how do you know if it's viable? Not the ben pekua. That's a different story. It doesn't need shechita. That's just considered part of the mother. But let's say an actual animal that's born, do you have to wait 8 days? Okay. If you say they argue that you're allowed to shecht it when it's in with the first 8 days, halacha k'maisei and halacha k'maisei. So do you pass like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel or not? It's a very important question for the kashrus industry. Are these calves kosher? They have these little birds, these hens. They serve like sometimes at dinners, very small. I don't know if it means they're very young. Tashima, come and listen. It says Egel Shnele b'yamtiv shecht denese b'yamtiv. Very strong proof. Calf that's born on Yamtiv, you can shecht it on the day it's born. Very clear. There's no such a good answer. It's clear you're allowed to shecht it before it's 8 days old. What are you going to tell me? It's Sukkot and you're talking about Shmini Atzeres? That wouldn't be a question. The Chiddush over here is we're talking about that. You don't say that it's something, not something that was designated, or, something like that. Is it muktzah? That's the discussion. We're saying no, you're allowed to shecht it on the day that it's born. The Gemara says no, it's not a good proof. We know that this was a full term. That whole story with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is only when you don't know if it's a full term. If it was conceived 9 months ago. You don't know, maybe it was 8 months ago. And then you have to wait. So it throws in a little twist over here that changes everything. Tashima, come and listen. Oh, 1 second. By a bachar. A bachar, the firstborn animal is normally a sacrifice, unless it has a mum. What happens if there's an animal that's giving birth and it's a firstborn animal? You can't really shecht it on Yom Tov, but it's giving birth. So the Gemara says that if the animal is born together with the mum, that you're allowed to shecht it. Even though it wasn't really designated for this, because you would have thought that it's going to be a carbon. But if it was born with the mum, nevertheless, Noah's Chazak Isura or something. Whatever the case is, you're allowed to shecht it on that day. Gemara says, well, I'll give you the same answer that we gave before. We know that it was a full term. So then it has no proof that there's a machlekes with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel and whether we paskin like the Rabbanan or not. Tashima, another proof. Dam Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Alach Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Aha. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. Rav Yehuda was a student of Shmuel after he was by Rav. He says the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. That's enough for us. If you say the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, then that means halacha mechlal de pligi. Then there must be a machlekes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to say the halacha is like him. So it must be that the rabbis hold that if you shecht one of these animals before 8 days, that it would be permissible. That would be the opinion of the Rabbanan. We don't paskin like that. If it's a doubt, if it's you have to wait till the 8th day. Shma mina. That's what halacha would be. No, the Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. I don't see the note here to tell me that we actually paskin like the way this says. Usually there's like a little letter there that tells me, sends me to the Shulchan Aruch. Amar Abaya, nafal min agag. This is a discussion regarding yibum. Now, what happens is, if a couple has a child that's a viable child, then if the husband dies, then the wife doesn't need to do yibum, the levirate marriage, to marry the brother of the deceased. She doesn't have to marry the brother of the deceased because there's a child, even if the child then later dies. But if there was no viable child, then the mother needs to do yibum. Let's say the child was nafal min agag, he fell off the roof, or was eaten by a lion. Divrei akol chayu, everyone agrees that that child was a viable child, just some crazy accident. Ki pligi shepiyah mes. The whole machlekes is after the child was born, it sneezed. I think piyuk means sneezed or something. Burped or sneezed, I'm not sure exactly. And then it died. Marsa v'chayu, marsa v'mesu.
Did piyuk to To yawn.
Yawn. Piak is to yawn. Okay. So he did some motion. So the Gemara says, "L'may nafkamina." What's the difference if it's alive or not? It says, "Lifter min hayibam," to exempt the mother from marrying the brother of the deceased, of her brother-in-law. Nafal min agag goyach lari dibra kol chayu. Everyone says that the child is alive. The problem is for Rav Huna bar v'harav papa Rav Huna bar Rav Shua kloi lebei bereid Rav Idi baravin. They went to the house of the grandson. No, lebei, the house of the son of Rav Idi baravin. The son of Rav Idi baravin. V'avidlu igla tilsa b'yamama d'shvia. And they prepared, the son of Rabbi Baravin prepared an igla tilsa, which is the third born calf of an animal, which is the best, that's the strongest. The first isn't always the strongest. The third one, but he prepared it, he shechted it on the 7th day of after its birth. And they said to him, if you would have waited till this evening, till the 8th day, but now we're not going to eat from it. Now, there's a little bit of an issue here. If it would have died, then we can understand that maybe we would say that it was never alive. But if there's an outside source that causes its death, over here it was the shchita. In the last case, it was, it fell off the roof or got eaten by a lion. We said that because the death was caused by an outside source, then we assume that it was actually viable. So here too as well. Why are you making an assumption that it would have died? You only do that if it died with no outside cause. So the Gemara says, it's the other way around. Everyone agrees that if it dies from no outside source, that it was considered not viable. If there is an outside source, that's where the machlekes is. Mar Savar Mesu. One says that it was, yes, it had an outside source, but it was dead. Mar Savar Chayu. The other one says that it was alive and it died from an outside source. Yeah.
Well, just a comment on the yawning. It's interesting that the Gemara, and thank you, Moshe, for saying that the translation was yawn. If you think about a yawn, not a cough, not a sneeze, a yawn is a slow inspiration, and then it's over, quick expiration, all right? And the number one cause for natural child death is not like cardiac arrest, but respiratory arrest. So the last thing that they would have seen in that child is like the gasp, and then no more breath. So I think it might have been the Gemara's way of saying it died from a respiratory arrest. Take a breath, like a gasp, gone. I mean, that's what it looks like.
Right. Very interesting. It says that they used to, years ago, they passed away when they sneezed. They made this play. No. They made this play in one of the camps. It was like during the times before Yaakov Avinu, when they passed away, and the person dressed up like the old man was like going back, like he's going to sneeze, and all the family comes running.
But that's because there was no mother around to pull his ear to stop him.
Okay. Now it says, Breder Avdimi bar Yosef es Yalla Yenuka begoit lassen Yom in Shachiv. The son of Rav Dimi bar Yosef had a child. And he died, the child passed away within 30 days. Yosef, Kamesavli Levei, he was sitting Shiva for the child. Now, Amalei Avua, the father tells him, Savrunisa Kabayas Lamechal, what are you sitting Shiva for the child? You're trying to get the food that they give to the mourner. You're like, you just want there was food that they would distribute to the mourner. Amalei, he says, no. Kimli shekolei chadashav. I know that this child was, it's not that this was a stillborn, that this was a miscarriage. I know that this child was a full term. It's interesting, Rashi earlier towards the top of the page, Rashi says that there were no relations from 9 months ago. Anyway, that's how he would know. He would know when the conception was. Rav Ashi Yikla Bei Rav Kana. Rav Ashi came to the house of Rav Kana, and Isser Bei Milsa B'Goit Lassen Yomin. He also had a loss, was within 30 days of the birth. Chazid Yosef Kamasabal Alavei, saw that he was mourning over it. What about the halacha that we said a few lines above? Halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that if it's not 30 days old, there's no, it's not a viable. So why are you mourning over it? It was never alive. I know that it was a full term. Let's leave it over here.